All right, this is Lecture 2 in Eastern Philosophy, the Plague Years. Now, if we were in class, I'd have you read a series of quotes. I'm going to read them for you. All right? This very body is the body of enlightenment, the Buddha. This birth and death is the life of the Buddha, Dogen Zenji. Don't worry about your former lives. Just look carefully at your present body. Don't wonder about your future lives. Just look at your mind in the present. And that's a Tibetan proverb. Again and again, look within your own mind and investigate the reality of your own intelligence. That's from Padmasambhava. And ask yourself, who then continues to think? Asked Dogen Zenji. Then the Buddha says, what you are is what you have been. What you will be is what you do now. And here's a quote from the Bardo Tadal, which concerns what we're about to start studying. Now the time has come for you to seek a path. Your breathing is about to cease. You are now about to experience the primary clear light of the first Bardo. You experience reality stark and void like space, your immaculate naked intellect dawning clear and void without horizon and center. At this moment, know yourself. And then Socrates tells us, the ones who philosophize correctly practice dying like a craft. And then the Buddha adds, O you monk, every moment you are born, decay, and die. To a lover of wisdom, a philosopher, thoughts about death are a necessity, because not to think about death and dying is to ignore a fundamental reality of what it means to be human, right? And remember our old idea of what philosophy is, knowledge of what is most real and how to live in the light of it. And how you view what is most real will determine how you live. And certainly, given our definition of reality, what's going to happen to everyone, whether we like it or not, death is certainly a reality, right? And Socrates says then, true philosophers make dying their profession, or the ones who philosophize correctly practice dying like a craft. Think about what he means by that, because see, we're all dying. Living is dying. Philosophers just make a practice, try to become aware of and live in the light of what we're all doing anyway. Philosophy exists because humans are mortal. It is a response to the human condition. Philosophy, as the human attempt to understand ourselves, is found by Socrates in the ancient question of the examined life. As he put it in the Apology, the unexamined life is not worth living for a human being. And as you think through what it means to be human, the great necessity of human mortality makes itself evident, and you begin to realize that those who philosophize correctly practice dying like a craft. In modern philosophy, this connection of philosophy to human mortality and its accompanying concern for self-knowledge has been cast aside in the pursuit of method and specialization into compartments of knowledge, and it's as if it's become simply some kind of intellectual puzzle, another way to distract ourselves from what really matters. But it's an ancient thought, only recently dismissed by the power centers of modern culture, that when you die, who you really are enters into something more real. Now Socrates, in thinking about this on the day he was going to be executed, which would be a good way to get your mind clearly focused, says he doesn't know for sure what he'll find, but he's convinced it'll be something good. Right? Now we wonder, right, how can he speak with authority about dying if he's never died? But the folks we'll be reading now claim to speak from experience, like all good followers of the Buddha Dharma. And notice that the emphasis is on how to die. And since we're always dying, then focusing on how to die means focusing on how to live. Right? To practice dying like a craft is to practice living like a craft too. And this is central to the astonishing philosophy of Vajrayana Buddha Dharma, found in the book popularly called the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Now, there is no Tibetan Book of the Dead, if by that you mean a book written by Tibetans about the dead. Instead, we might accurately say there are many sets of teachings handed down orally and then written down in set of block prints about the meaning of death. There's scores of them, a vast literature on death and dying in varying formats. And through a historical accident, one instance of those texts, which was itself a part of a much larger series of texts, happened to be collected in a certain way into English as a separate book. And in fact, there was a fellow named Evanswentz, and he went to Tibet and he met some Tibetan masters and he learned about the death teachings of the Tibetans, and he picked out part of it and had it translated. And because at that time there was a very popular book called the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which really is an Egyptian Book of the Dead, they picked a title so it would sell. So they called it the Tibetan Book of the Dead, right? And here's the original translation, right? Into English by Lama, Lama who? Yeah. By Lama Govinda and Evanswentz, right? But the title really is something quite different. Here it is in Tibetan. It's pronounced Bardo Tadal, right? And it's made up of parts. Bar means in between, transition or middle. Do is just a grammatical particle that means it makes it a noun. And this grol, it's written out grol, but it's pronounced dol, right? It means to save or to liberate, right? So the title is something like Liberation We'll Learn by Hearing with Understanding in the Bardo, which has various senses: states of transition, the in-between state between birth and death, the intermediate state, the middle ground, or simply liberation by hearing with understanding in the Bardo. Might be just the best way to put it. For in this philosophy, all of reality, the whole of what we call life and death, is made up of a series of transition states, a flow of bardos. Nothing is permanent or stands still, and nothing can be thought of as separate from everything else. So these transition points are exactly the continuity or the interrelatedness of everything. In Buddha Dharma philosophy, what we call life and death is a reality that flows like a stream, and we are ripples or waves in it. Remember the image from earlier in the semester. You're a stream, and in the stream a whirlpool forms, created by the conditions of the river and how it's flowing. And you could walk by it for a few days and see it, and it might last for a while, and then one day it would be gone, right? Like that. So what we call life and death is a reality that flows like a stream, and we're like that whirlpool, or like a ripple in a wave. And flashing out is a series of transition states, revealing the basic stream. We ignore the basic continuity of the stream, cover it over through ignorance, but still the basic ground is there. And we detect it as phase shifts that lie in between as transition points, seen as transition points from the point of view of ego, but as glimpses of the continuous underlying stream from the point of view of enlightened mind. The descriptions which the Bardo Tadal gives of what you experience in the intermediate state are not primitive myths or theological speculation. There are no supernatural beings in the strict sense. Instead, what are called the deities, or we'll learn the proper name for them, what are described are the imaginative reflexes of inner processes and states of mind produced in creative imagination. It is a calling up of symbols of the processes of your own mind that are meant to remind you of your true nature. And over again, you'll notice the text says, don't be afraid. These are the self-displays of your own mind. And the liberation by hearing is made possible by someone who's listened before, practiced meditation and awareness of their own mind, and so they can be reminded of what they've already experienced. And of course, one of the more looming transition points is physical death. It seems to stand out and grip our attention. But the Tibetan philosophers teach that what we call life is made up of moments of transitions like that reveal the basic stream of impermanence underlying apparent substantiality. Like what I'm doing now and what you're doing now. We're in a bardo. We're in an intermediate place, a state of transition where we can clearly realize the truth of impermanence. Mm-hmm. And if we then make a practice, a discipline, a craft of going through these transition points now, When our now becomes the more abrupt transition point of physical death, it won't represent a discontinuity, but a continuity, because you will have always been practicing dying. To practice negotiating the states of transition is the art of life. In Buddhist philosophy, it's explicit that birth and death is something that's happening without interruption in each of our daily lives, that it's a part of our daily experience, as near to us as each breath we take. Right? And what I'm sure of is, in fact, what I experience daily. That's what captures my attention. And any teaching of the Dharma can be understood through your own daily experience of yourself and others, and you need look no further than that. Now, at this point, I'd have had you read through what are called the main verses of the 6 bardos. Right? Now, this is found on page 98 in your book, or if the page number is different, just look in the very back and look for the main verses of the 6 bardos. And I'll read it to you. Now, when the bardo of birth is dawning upon me, I will abandon laziness, for which life has no time, enter the undistracted path of study, reflection, and meditation, making projections in mind the path, and realize the 3 bodies of enlightenment. Now that I have once attained a human body, there is no time on the path for the mind to wander. Now when the bardo of dreams is dawning upon me, I will abandon the corpse-like sleep of careless ignorance, and let my thoughts enter their natural state without distraction. Controlling and transforming dreams in luminosity, I will not sleep like any animal, but unify completely sleep and practice. Now when the bardo of meditation dawns upon me, I will abandon the crowd of distractions and confusions and rest in the boundless state without grasping or disturbance, firm in the 2 practices, visualization and complete. At this time of meditation, one-pointed, free from activity, I will not fall into the power of confused emotions. Now, when the bardo of the moment before death dawns upon me, I will abandon all grasping, yearning, and attachment, enter undistracted into clear awareness of the teaching, and eject my consciousness into the space of unborn mind. Now, when the bardo of reality dawns upon me, I will abandon all thoughts of fear and terror. I will recognize whatever appears as my projection and know it to be a vision of the bardo. Now that I have reached this crucial point, I will not fear the peaceful and wrathful ones, my own thoughts' projections. Now when the bardo of becoming dawns upon me, I will concentrate my mind one-pointedly and strive to prolong the results of good karma. This is the time when perseverance and pure thought are needed. Abandon jealousy and meditate on the Guru with his consort. With mind far off, not thinking of death's coming, performing these meaningless activities, returning empty now would be complete confusion. The need is recognition, Dharma. So why not practice Dharma at this very moment? From the mouths of teachers come these words: if you do not keep your teacher's teaching in your heart, will you not become your own deceiver? It begins with being born. Right now when the bardo of birth dawns upon me, this is a book of life, addressed to those who in the prime of their life, for the first time, really begin to think of what life means. Trungpa Rinpoche said that we could translate it as the Tibetan book of birth, and that would be just as accurate. In each moment, true, we're dying, but also in each moment we're being born. And think of focusing on that, on the moment when you are first waking up, say, which would be the gap between the bardo of dreams and the bardo of waking life. And on line 3, where it says, enter into reality undistractedly through reflection and meditation, the word study there that it uses is a translation of tos, right? The same as we find in the title of the book. Listening is learning, right? In other words, the hearing here, right? Liberation by hearing, right? Hearing means hearing and doing, right? It's a Tibetan word that means to hear and to do, not just to like hear it and just take it as a theory or whatever, right? You could relate this back to the Upanishads, where the Chela would sit down next to the Guru, Upanishad, and he would carry out the words, right? You do them, right? So listening is learning, right? And related to this is the term nantos, disciple, one who hears as a follower, not just like somebody passing by overhearing something, hearing with the heart, taking it to heart now, wherever your now finds you. To find what in Tibetan is called sultrim, which is usually translated simply as discipline, but it means literally the appropriate or just way. To find what is real and live in a way that does justice to the reality and is appropriate to it. Remember what the Buddha taught, that when you really begin to pay attention to what is real, to discipline yourself through stillness and attention, that what you first realize is the reality of impermanence, that nothing is permanent and constant, not even and especially not your body, which you are always leaving behind. 1-year-old body, 2-year-old body, 30-year-old body. I keep on, in my old notes, I keep on having to add years. 54-year-old body, now 64-year-old body. Where is it? Where is me? I'm more like a stream, right? If we could view things temporally if we viewed ourselves across time, I'd look like some funny pale white river, a Caucasian river. Then there are beautiful black rivers and brown rivers and so on, right? Yeah. And this is presented not as a theory, not as a religious dogma, but simply a truth of reason to be verified in actual experience. Look and see for yourself. Remember, the one who woke up claimed just to teach what you can experience and know for yourself, and that if you thought, really thought, through the practice of stillness, discipline, and attention, you would see the 3 marks of existence: impermanence, insubstantiality, and dukkha, the 3 invariable characteristics of everything that comes into being, 3 truths of being which every bardo moment reveals. A bardo moment is a realization of these 3 marks of existence. In each bardo moment, we experience the basic structure of reality, of the form of change, of the only absolute, which is dynamic change. So every moment, we're dying and being reborn. The different bardos are simply states of consciousness in our lives. The state of normal waking consciousness, the normal consciousness of being born into the human world, the state of dream consciousness, the state of heightened awareness in meditation, the state of the experiencing of death, the state of the experiencing of reality, the state of rebirth consciousness. We are said to experience these, in fact, every time we fall asleep and then wake up, if we only had the wit to see it. And impermanence and insubstantiality, said another way, let us see the emptiness that is in fact the interdependence that is reality, right? Remember, emptiness means empty of a separate existence, right? It's like a shorthand. Everything is empty, and they mean empty of a separate existence, right? So interdependence makes us realize there are no things as separate selves, and that's the mark of insubstantiality. So no things to continue unchanged, and that's impermanence. So empty of separate, unchanging selves, all events must be understood as interconnected and interdependent, and we arrive at the idea of interbeing, which every bardo moment reveals. What sparkles out at us in that clear light is the essential interrelatedness of reality. Then dukkha, the third mark, dukkha as suffering then arises when we ignore the basic facts of impermanence and insubstantiality, which reveals the emptiness that is essential interdependence. When things change, transition, go through bardo moments, we resist the transition, thinking that permanence equals security. Like I had to overcome my resistance to filming these lectures, right? Because I'm so used to doing it with you guys and gals, just talking to you. And now I'm just thankfully talking to one of my former students and to a camera, right? So I do have one of my former students here, for which I'm thankful. All right. So we think we can isolate ourselves from the change, right, by just trying to act like everything's normal. You might as well think you could make yourself safe by making your heart stop beating. Not a good move. So each moment of living, and each nanosecond, really, if we had the skill to see it, we're experiencing the transition, the in-betweenness, the interconnectedness that is the only constant. Only change is absolute. only impermanence. Liberation by hearing with understanding means to practice dying to ego, to practice letting go of the illusions of substantiality and permanence in each moment of our life, to practice dying to ego illusion now. Now is the time to practice dying like a craft, so that when your physical death is your now, you will be able to artfully handle that too. Because for most of us, it will be the clearest bardo in our experience. We'll have the greatest chance to enter into it fully and realize the truth of reality. So the root idea of the Bardo Tadal is to listen now. Listen with understanding now. All that is real is now, wherever your now finds you. All that the past is a memory you're having now. The future is only an expectation. You're imagining now what things will be. All you have is now. Listen now, wherever your now finds you. Listen to that last root verse again, and then the first one. With mind far off, not thinking of death's coming, slaving away on the useless doings of this life, and then to come out empty-handed, that would be complete confusion. Recognition of necessity is the true Dharma. So why not practice Dharma at this very moment? If you do not put your teacher's teachings in your heart, won't you become your own deceiver? Now when the bardo of birth dawns upon me, I will abandon laziness, for life has no more time. Enter into reality undistractedly, learning, thinking, and meditating, and making perception and mind the path, I will realize the three bodies of enlightenment. Now that I've once attained a human body, there is no time on the path for the mind to wander. So to know how to die is to know how to live. To fully embrace the emptiness is to become completely whole. So a book that teaches us to face death is above all a book of life, a book of self-knowledge, and so a book of wisdom, a book of philosophy, which is the love of wisdom. I don't claim to understand it fully, even though I've been reading it for 54 years as a personal exercise and for about 30 years as an academic. I'm nothing but a finger pointing at a finger, pointing at the moon. So the way we'll try to read it is to master its narrative structure, the story it tells. That's the objective side, the academic side, the side that engages our imagination and reason in the wonderful ways Zimmer wrote about in the Steely Barb we read at the beginning of the semester. The personal side is what you make of it, what I think of as the philosophy lab. The objective side is a requirement for testing purposes and the funny dance of institutional life we've joined up in called college. The second is an optional lab, the lab of self-knowledge. So consider the narrative structure of the Bardo Tadal. It's like a framework to build everything else on. All the bits of information and the images and symbols we'll be learning. All that we have been studying this semester, in fact, is to prepare us to read it properly. So, and there'll be a handout on the Moodle, but essentially, the general narrative structure of the Bardo Tadal, you start out with what's called the Shikai Pardo, right, the first main Bardo. And it consists of an experience of the primary luminosity, or the clear light, and then the secondary luminosity, or the clear light. Then you enter the second phase, called the Chonyi Bardo, where you experience the peaceful and wrathful deities, which are in essence just the 5 Buddha families, which actually represent the inner nature of your own mind. And then you enter the final stage, the Shipai Bardo, where you experience roaming, judgment, and the process of rebirth. And as you read and work through the narrative, let the following topics serve as guideposts. The role and function of karma in each stage, the nature of reality presented in the metaphor of light and how it's present in each stage, what showing or setting face to face means in each stage, and what the phrase know yourself in the Bardo means. And you can look at the final exam too. I mean, that's essentially what I've told you, to pay attention to the things I'm going to ask you to write about, right? So you want, first of all, to simply memorize the structure and then the elements of the story. Again, symbols of what is most real, more fingers pointing at the moon, right? And one final note, This book comes out of the tradition of Buddha Dharma, which emphasizes the bodhisattva, who vows not to enter full enlightenment until all beings do so as well. Awareness of impermanence, insubstantiality, and dukkha brings, in experience, the realization of compassion. At the heart of Vajrayana Buddha Dharma is the ideal of compassion, which arises from logic and hard thinking about what is real. It's not a feeling, they say, but a way to act based on realization and insight. Compassion is, in fact, a hard-headed realism that recognizes what is real and how to live in the light of it. So as those who in this tradition might put it, may whatever good that results from all this filming and talking and your writing go toward the enlightenment of all beings, limitless as space. Thank you for your kind attention.